Anthony, I'm going to make you a panelist because I don't think you want to screen share, but I should hear your voice now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you fine, Anthony. Thank you so much for coming to F.A.C.E and hanging out with us for a little bit. Okay.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
You know, I've always wanted to interview you, and you know, we have a few things in common, and I know a little bit about you, but for our viewers on investing.com, we're being live streamed there, and our regular F.A.C.E attendees, why don't you tell us how you got to the floor of the CME and what you were doing before that, and what led you or who you blame for getting in the industry?
Yeah, I actually started in the industry by accident. And I say that because I actually got into a car accident right out of high school, and I didn't really have a plan as to what I was going to do, but I got in a car accident, broke my leg. Long story short, I had to do a lot of rehab, so I wasn't really going anywhere for some time. I was actually trying to get down to Florida, which is where I live now. I always wanted to live in a warm climate. So I took a job out of the newspaper for a job.
So you were born and raised in Chicago, Anthony?
Born and raised in Chicago.
Okay, so that, you know, I went west, you went south. Yeah, were you dreaming? So as a kid, you were dreaming about getting, you know, you'd be watching the Rose Bowl with 4 inches of ice on your window and see people with their shirts off on New Year's, and then, you know, all the surf movies from Florida, Fort Lauderdale. Did you dream about it as a kid?
Not necessarily that, but I always wanted to live in like Miami or something like that. And I said, you know what, maybe I'll try to go to school there or do something like that. And I didn't really have a solid plan, but I knew I wanted to be down here. So,
well, you know, what closed me was Jan and Dean, 2 girls for every guy. You know, that song, Surf City. I said, well, you know, I like the probabilities there. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, that was it. No, so I came on the trading floor. I started as a runner in the meets, worked for Lynn Waldock. I did that for I don't know how many months. Then I moved to Refco as a runner, and I then kind of moved my way upstairs to, you know, the 2 trading floors at CME. I worked in the Eurodollar options for just about a year, and then met a friend. I'll tell you a quick funny story. So I was at a wedding. I was 19 years old in Chicago. One of my friend's older brothers was getting married, and at a wedding, and his dad was speaking to a guy who we called Uncle Tony, and Uncle Tony said to me, he's like, "Hey Anthony, like you're on the trading floors." He goes, "I want you to go meet my nephew." He goes, "He's a big shot down there." And I'm thinking, oh great, this is gonna be perfect, right? I'm gonna finally get a break. I'm tired of being a runner. I've been a runner for over a year now. And
you wanted a red jacket, not a blue.
I wanted to be, you know, just anything better than where I was at the moment, which I loved it, but I was looking for something better. So I go to the CME floor and I go, "Listen, I need you to look for this person's name." And they were like, "You know what, sir? He's just not here." And I'm just like, "Listen, I'm positive he's here." Uncle Tony was so adamant that he was there. That he was a big shot here, that he has to be here. They're like, no. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Another person who got the board of trade wrong with the Merc, blah, blah, blah. Well, a few months goes by. I'm in the break room eating my lunch. Sitting across from me, I look at the guy's badge, another yellow coat. It was the exact guy that he had mentioned. His name was Carmen. And I said, "You're Carmen?" He goes, "Yeah, why?" He goes, I met your Uncle Tony." He starts laughing. He goes, "Well, I work in the S&P. I said, "Really?" Well, we became friends. 2 weeks later, he came up to me and he's like, "Hey," he goes, "I need help in the S&P. It's getting busy down there." He goes, "Would you want a job checking trades?" I said, "Sure." I quit where I was up in the Euros. I went to the S&P, and I never left.
Wow, great story. So he wasn't the big shot that Uncle Tony said, but he had, So in your life, he was a big shot. All right. He was a door opener. God, that's a great story, Anthony. So let me ask you, that time on the floor, you know, you remember it. I mean, even as a runner now, no one wanted to be the low end of the caste system. But man, when I think back at those times, they were really special times and a special place. And, the camaraderie and what people have to go through now to find a place to learn the business. We were fortunate to be able to rub elbows with guys that, made their living off the markets, not just filling paper either. So did you notice every time from people handling paper in the S&P pit that they were very interested in orders that had STP at the end of them?
Stops.
Yeah. Why do you laugh?
I never worked for brokers. I only worked for locals. So I never saw.
They didn't hold decks?
I wish I did.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But no, I only worked for locals and I only checked trades. And when I was a runner, I was running for, like, on the meets, I would just run the filled orders. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know what the hell I was looking at for the most part. And when I was in the Euros, I most of the time I was learning ARB at the time in the Euros. And the option stuff, I was basically there really early in the morning to help them run sheets, and do things like that. And throughout the day, I was just more of a go-getter guy. I would just go get whatever they wanted me to get. I wasn't really, it was because I worked for a group. So once again, I was just always working for traders. I never really worked on the broker side.
Okay. You remember audible roars when stops were elected?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, to me, that was one of the first things I saw in the gallery before I started my illustrious career as a runner. And, I started to notice that when I ran orders in, they really paid attention to stop loss orders, because I think, like now, the way that black boxes use them for coming out of positions, they're almost like magnets for liquidity, and at times set at least short-term turning points, sometimes major inflection points. So I just wondered what your experience was with stops. So so you're handling a deck, or you're not handling a deck, you're working for locals. Were you trading then? And what took you into trading, and how did it go for you when you first started off?
So what I did was a unique job, and I think that this is really one of the major differences between the way people learn how to trade now versus the way that I learned the basics of trading. Number one, I couldn't trade unless I was a member. At the time, even for electronic markets, the E-mini S&P wasn't quite launched yet when I was clerking in the S&P, but how I learned or what I did as a job, which was teaching me how to trade, was I would check all of their trades with other clerks that were checking for brokers or locals. I would do their position and their money. So they'd hand me a card. I take the dupe off. I put the card in my pocket. I clean up the card a little bit before I put it in my pocket. Then I'd look at the dupe and I'd be like, okay, you're short 3, short 15, whatever. And I would go and check those trades, and I would continue to keep their position and their money. And they'd always be like, where am I at? And I'd be like,
right.
And I would tell them that. So what I was looking at, why that helped me trade, was because it would tell me, what they were doing. I would always know their positions, how fast they were getting in and out, how big of losers they'd be taking. And then I would really just watch them and feel the pain. Like if one of my guys was getting crushed, I'd be like, man, I would literally, once you got to know him, I'd be like, man, what are you doing? It's not good for you. Stop it today. And it was like, he's like, you're right. All right, I gotta get out of here. And like the days they were doing really well, I noticed that a majority of them made money, a majority of their money in short amounts of time. So they didn't make money every day throughout the month. They all made money during the busy times of the month. And the rest of the days were grind days. So that was also taught me something, that it's like, you're not necessarily going to come in every day and make money. And, so I really learned that loss was a big part of the game before I started. So I learned a lot of those types of things.
Okay.
At the beginning, working for those guys.
Okay. So I know I took a course by a guy named Alan Rohrbeck at the Merck called his technical analysis class, and he had us buy the Edwards and McGee book, Technical Analysis of Stock Trends, and I really loved learning about formations and technical trading. What style have you adopted? I know a lot of guys in the pit had guys, besides keeping track of their positions, doing point and figure for them. What did you gravitate towards on the floor as far as technical tools?
Well, to be honest with you, the guys that I worked for, they didn't really use anything technical. They were all pure skill.
Right.
I didn't even when I started to trade, I didn't even look at charts. And when I initially started in the pit, what I would do is I would go to the CQG screens, because at the time that was allowed. That's all they had on the floor, was maybe one or two.
It was great. I know people lined up to use them.
Lined up. I used to get there early and I'd print out just basic charts just to see where the market was trending, and then I would go in and at that time I was just trying to, what we would call get an edge, work the bid or work the offer, and hopefully a broker would hit me, or a local who got a big order would give me some. And so this way you're taught to get a free look. So if I got filled when it was on the bid, I could just work the offer or hit the bid to cover it, to scratch it. So your first thoughts were to learn how to scratch trade. So initially that's how I learned. And that just didn't work out for me, because I was such a small local in the pit that even when I would get the edge to get in, the minute they turn against me, I was always paying up to get out. So it was never really advantageous to even get in. I felt like all I was doing was getting in and getting out for losers. And that's really all I did for a good period of time.
What's interesting to me is what has happened. Now they're bowling alleys, right, bro? All the exchange floors, you could throw a bowling ball down the middle of the floor and not hit anybody. They're so empty that people had to reinvent themselves after the death of open outcry. And they had to learn how to trade, or they became content providers, or they just ended up not knowing what to do. I'm sure you know a lot of people that were great traders that really, off the floor, they couldn't trade. Did you experience that yourself?
Well, I didn't, because I went to electronic right away. So I was not a successful pit trader. And I stayed only in the pit for a period of maybe 6 to 12 months. And after I had gone through my first trading account, I had quickly moved to the E-mini, because at the time, like I said, it was not advantageous for me to get the edge. Even if I got hit on the bid when I was bidding, or the offer when I was offering, I still was not. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I knew that I was very, in my mind, more technical, and I was like, this is just not for me. So
I didn't like the out trade risk. So when I was there, I would actually pay the broker to fill it and go upstairs. I learned how to trade off the floor as a registered rep Series 3 guy. I couldn't adjust to the noise and like to look at the whole picture instead of just what's happening in 1 month and one market. So you became technical. What kind of style do you use now, Anthony? I know you have a community and you hang out with guys during the day when you're trading. What's your style and methodology for trading now? What did you gravitate and evolve to?
Well, I don't have a community, and the only community that I use is Twitter.
Okay. I thought, anyway, you've had some great. Go ahead.
No, I said there's some Slack rooms that I go in and out of.
I see.
Periodically, but there's nothing that I am, I'll go in and just chat with different friends and different, groups. But I honestly haven't even been in those, and for, I would say, at least, I don't know, probably even been a year since I've even been in Slack now. But over the past several years, I have done a few of those. But
what are you trading now? What, you still focus on S&Ps?
S&P, and I trade the 10-year Ultra.
Okay. Is that an ETF? The 10-year Ultra?
10-year Ultra is really, it's a product that CME created. I'd say it's about 4 years now. I don't know the exact time. I've been trading it for about 2 years. I used to trade the 10-year quite often, but the 10-year Ultra it's the actual 10-year. So like the 10-year that we all know as the 10-year is actually, I think, comes out to like a 7.5 year on delivery. So they created one for delivery. It would be 10 years. So they created Ultra 10-year and 30-year ultra, and it's
Okay.
not as, doesn't have as big of a book as.
What's a symbol on it?
I like
Do you
it.
know?
Well, it's not. They don't do. It really, it should be just TEN is what I use.
Okay.
It depends on, I think, what platform you're using, but on
Okay.
TradeStation, what I use for charting, it's just TEN, and they don't really even have a continuation chart yet for it.
Wow. Okay. All
And
right.
I don't. Yeah, so that's what I trade. It's basically the 10-year. It moves very similar with it, but
Yeah.
it has a little bit more slippage, which I like. It's not as, the book isn't, several thousand up, which I like. And then I trade the S&P, but I don't trade the S&P every day like I used to. I trade it, when it's busy. I'm actually headed to Europe not too long from now, and I'm actually on holiday for the next few weeks.
Okay.
But yeah, I know it's funny. I was talking to a friend yesterday. I said, sure, I'm going to be gone this week, next week, and the week after. I said it's going to be really busy. It's funny how that always
Everything will
works.
happen. Are you day trading? Are you swing trading? What kind of trading are you doing?
Day.
Day? Okay.
Yeah, I do some swing now. I definitely have. I used to be a lot more of a hardcore scalper. I did that for many years, but for the past, I would say since 2012, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there, I've moved definitely towards more holding intraday. I watched the first hour. You asked me what was more my style now. So I watch the first hour every day, and then regardless of what market I'm trading, so if it's the 10-year or if it's the S&P, I wait to see how the first hour closes, and then I'll trade directionally based upon how it closes around support or resistance, and then I typically will have a position on, and then I'll scalp around it. So I trade around a core position, but I'm typically one direction until an objective is hit or until I'm pushed out of that, stopped out of that position.
That's a great segue, objectives, because, it's one thing to make a great call. It's even better if you trade the call and actually have skin in the game instead of just making predictions. And the most difficult part for most people, I'll include myself, is to turn it into a great hold. So even if you're scalping and you talk about objectives, what keeps you in the trade so you're not getting out, or maybe you take partials until your objective is reached? Do you manage it from a higher time frame? I think a lot of people have trouble being patient, waiting for their targets, and leave a lot of pips on the table. So how would you advise people to, not be a victim to what I call first daylight syndrome, where, you might be risking 50 and you're up 30 and you take it?
So what I do is, first of all, I think that this is a big reason why I'm excited for the micros for the S&P, because I think that the contracts that are a little bit smaller, I think it's important for people to be able to trade multiple contracts, because
when are they going to launch that?
Micros were launched. They were launched last month.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, the micro minis are launched, and
because I love micro FX for people that are learning. Yeah, go ahead.
So the micros, I think. So the reason why I even want to mention that is just really because I believe it's very important for people to be able to trade using multiple contracts. Because for me, what I do is I get on a core position that I feel that I am comfortable letting that position work through all of the noise. Okay, so I am in something that's small enough to where if it goes my way right away or it goes against me right away, I don't feel compelled to have to cover that position. The second thing that I do, because I have an active mind and I'm always wanting to be in and out of the market, so what I do is then I'll trade on a shorter time frame levels in the direction that I want to be around that core position with tighter stops. So I will, sometimes that will hurt me, sometimes that will help me, but ultimately it keeps me in that longer term, even though it's only in a day position, because I'm active around that position. And what I do is, and I'm sure a question would come up, is, well, what happens if you start losing more than what you were even risking on the initial core? Well, I don't let that happen. If it does happen, then the trade is kind of done. Then I've just scalped myself into a pulp. But for the most part, that's how I've learned how to hold winners, is to hold trades through to where I think until they're not working, is to just smaller. And if you want to be active, then you trade around that core position. That's what I do.
Right.
Psychologically, that helps me.
Yeah, yeah, and partials because you're putting money, you're getting paid, and you're
Yeah,
still there if it turns out to be exactly
exactly.
what you were expecting. Anthony, you've opened my eyes to a few things today. The TEN and now micros and S&Ps, and was wondering if you'd be willing, and you probably are, since you put it in your Twitter here. Survived a heart attack at 36. What happened, bro?
Yeah, 36 years old, actually at my trading screen, and was an interesting day to say the least. But yeah, no, I had a heart attack, and it's one of those things where at the moment it was happening, I didn't believe it, but luckily, I mean, I give the whole story on a podcast, right? It's on Futures Radio. You can go listen to it. I don't want to
Okay.
get
All right.
but it's basically I was there at my screens, and I wasn't feeling well. Chest pains went into my arm, into my wrist. I didn't believe it. I went next door. I took 2 aspirin. I sat in my car. Next thing you know, I drove into the hospital, and they, within an hour, they told me, they're like, you know what, you're actually having a heart attack. It turned out that a lot of it was related to stress, and I didn't have a blockage. So that was good news. So I've made a lot of changes in my life, to say the least.
Yeah, something like that really changes you. How about your perspective on time after that?
Well, my perspective, honestly, on just so many things has changed. But just I look at things now as is just that if you want, I guess the one thing I look back at my career was that, and I think that when you have something like that happen to you, it opens your eyes to whatever it is that you want to do, and if you love doing it, I put so much pressure on myself. I mean, I think that was the one thing that I look back and say, I didn't really enjoy life when I was losing. Not always the case, but a lot of times. So a lot of the pressures and the stresses I felt in the business were things that I put on myself. So I also realized that I needed to put just as much time away from the charts as I did into the charts to have a long, sustained career. And it's been over 5 years now since that happened, and I just feel so much more balanced on a day-to-day basis. And I don't put the pressure on myself that I used to. So many things have changed.
Great life lesson. You do have a great radio show and some elite guests.
Somebody actually sang to me on one of them, if you remember.
Yeah, in fact, I'm showing it here, Anthony. So let me ask you this: did Futures Radio spring out of that event where you just, I love teaching and interviewing people, and I had an event 5 years ago too. Isn't that interesting? So, surviving cancer, and I reinvented myself into more of a mentor and teacher and host. Did this Futures Radio program was spring forth after that?
Yes, yeah? It did, because I felt that I wasn't trading as active as I used to. I was actually forcing a lot of things, and I was doing some media on the floor of the exchange and even remotely for the networks and other things. And I said to myself, you know what? Why don't I talk to people that I know? And that was just one of those things in those moments where you're just laying down thinking about ideas. And I said, you know what? Why don't I start doing this? So it did spawn off of that. Yes.
Okay. And how do people find it? Because on your Twitter handle, it's not set up. You don't have a Twitter for Futures Radio, do you?
No, I don't. It's just me. They could find it on my YouTube channel at Anthony Crudele. There's a link on there, or they could go to futuresradio.com. So.
Okay. All right. So the best way for people to follow you is on Twitter and to listen to your podcast and your YouTube channel. So you have 3,000 subscribers. So it's growing very nicely for you, Anthony. I'm so happy for you, man.
Thank you, Dale.
And it's always great talking to a kindred spirit who had a similar journey, and even health-wise. And I'm so glad that you survived, and because you're doing a great service interviewing traders, interviewing people that help other people, and providing great content and sharing your story, Anthony. So great legacy you're building in the business, and I hope your show grows, and eventually, you replace CNBC, which I keep the volume down on.
Thanks, Dale. I appreciate it.
Buddy, what do you think? I mean, with this new world of media, you could have your own financial station. And I think you're great at being a host, too. Turnaround's fair play. And thank you for coming in. And thank you for interviewing me earlier in the year, Anthony. I consider you, like it or not, buddy, my trading warrior brother.
Cheers, Dale. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Oh, one question I have from the audience.
Okay.
Do you mentor?
No.
Okay.
I try to do it through the podcast. I try to do it through social media. If somebody has questions, if they have anything for me that I can help them with, I'm more than happy.
Okay. You're natural if you ever decide to do it, and it's pretty rewarding. I get as much pleasure out of the people that I work with doing great in the market, even if I'm not there. So just food for thought, bro.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's it, everyone, for Thursday. Good hunting the rest of the day. And thank you, Anthony Crudele, for a great time. I had a great time. Hope you guys enjoyed. And don't forget, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. See everyone to wrap up the week, TGIF tomorrow. You're welcome, Scott. You're welcome, Deandro. Thank you again, Anthony. And we'll see everyone tomorrow. Adios.